There have been a few events that have occurred since I saw you last, and by that I'm speaking to the press, that I wanted to acknowledge before we get into the executive order. First, our heartfelt condolences to the family of Janubi Kandula. This, of course, was a tragic and horrible incident. Currently, our traffic collision investigation squad continues to investigate this traffic death, and we must end traffic deaths and collisions on our streets. It's as simple as that. Everything that we do, every policy we implement, every investment we make, from physical structure to training, it has to be consistent with our Vision Zero strategies, and that's why we work so feverishly to get federal funds as well. And when we announced the $25 million we received from the Biden administration, we put that into practice through an equity lens. Where do we need it the most? What groups are being adversely affected? And so I'm very proud of our administration, and in particular our Seattle Department of Transportation, for looking at through an equity lens that still does not bring back the life we lost through Ms. Kandula. It doesn't say a lot in the way we want to say it to the families and her friends. So we want to make sure that everyone knows, as a city, we heal because of that. And secondly, everyone in this room, I believe, knows how Tyre Nichols was murdered. Let's just not mince words. Murdered at the hands of Memphis police, which sets back the trust we're trying to develop in the city, in the state, in this country. I'm very proud that the Seattle Police Department, both command staff, rank and file, community activists, city leaders, state leaders all stood in unison in saying that that was inhumane, that was cruel. We have to call it out, and now we have to go to work to make sure that certainly does not happen here. And I talked to mayors throughout this country, leaders throughout this country about that murder, and I said, let's just call it what it was. That's not distracting at all, by the way. But I wanted to put it in a context because as we continue to have open dialogue with our youth in schools, in gymnasiums, community centers, in homes, in churches, in mosques, as we continue to dialogue with what happened to Tyre Nichols, a person who lost his life shouting for his mother, that we heal once again, and we learn, and we articulate with perhaps a level of authenticity we haven't even found in ourselves before. Talk about in 2023. That's not us. Which really leads us into the spirit and the substance of this executive order that I'm very proud to sign. The logistics today, I'll speak, and we'll have a few people that are probably better speakers than me, by the way, talking about what this means to their communities and why we're doing this kind of work. Today we recognize that there's a strong need for culturally, linguistically, and religiously competent victim services for immigrants and refugees. We have to recognize that. When an unnatural death occurs, such as a death from gun violence, as an example, many immigrant and refugee communities have expressed difficulty communicating with representatives from law enforcement agencies, our own departments, as well as the medical examiner's office. So this executive order will ensure that the City of Seattle is providing immigrant and refugee families with tailored support during crisis response to sudden, unexpected, and unnatural deaths. That's the substance of what we're trying to put into action. One example, of course, where it became very apparent was the death of a TNC driver, Mohammed Kadiyeh. Now, the activism of our city's rideshare drivers, in addition to other community leaders or religious leaders, who fought hard to improve safety, is something we're fully committed to working with. We're having those discussions, and we've been having those discussions. And I'm very glad that the rideshare drivers are here represented today, and very grateful for their input in crafting this executive order. A lot of this has come from listening to their voices. So you've heard me talk before about our One Seattle approach. So our office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, working directly with impacted communities, help create a specific set of actions. You've heard me say before, talk is cheap. Actions speak louder than words. So here's the action we're taking. First, I am directing that our city departments develop coordinated strategies that enhance safety and access to information for immigrant and refugee families who've experienced a violent crime or the murder or disappearance of a loved one. This compels the creation of a strategy for providing consistent and equitable access to grief support services, medical treatment, protection for immigrant victims and family members who require language access, knowing that English certainly may not be a first language for many people from these particular communities. It directs SPD, the Seattle Police Department, to create and maintain language access resources relating to investigation processes for non-English speakers, to help the immigrant refugee communities, their families navigate through SPD's resources and service. It has to be user-friendly. It has to be immigrant and refugee-friendly. It cannot be hostile. This includes the translation of all available resources, both digital and printed. And if you run into a city employee who does not embrace this value, we want to know about that, because I believe that our city employees will understand not only the letter of this executive order, but the spirit of it. This directs city departments to identify existing resources or recommended alternative approaches for establishing victim support hotlines in multiple languages. In addition to the executive order, the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs will make available approximately $230,000 in this year, in 2023, to community-based organizations that serve youth, young adults, and their families from immigrant and refugee communities through what we're creating, which is new. It's called the New Immigrant Safety and Access Network. You hear from our director, Amni Mohammed, a little bit more about the Immigrant and Safety and Access Network. Funding will support programming to reduce community violence for youth and young adults from the immigrant and refugee backgrounds, and bolster support for those communities, unfortunately, when violence occurs. Now, there's many organizations represented here today. I don't know how you define diversity, but however you define it, it better describe what we have in here today. And so let me describe to you some of the organizations, just to name a few. Candelia, the Korean Community Service Center, the Lake City Collective, the Filipino Community of Seattle, South Park Center, African Community and Housing Development, the Muslim American Youth Foundation, CARE Washington, the Chinese Information Services, REWA, the Ukrainian Community Center, Helping Link, the Ethiopian Community Center, the Seattle Rideshare Drivers Association, and the Community Police Commission, and others. So, you're part of others if I miss you. I tried to get my notes right. So, don't say, Mayor Harrell, you didn't call my group out. So this week, you're part of others if I miss you. I tried to get my notes right. So don't say, Mayor Harrell, you didn't call my group out. So this week is National Gun Violence Awareness Week. The statistics are very clear. There was a 2019 report on gun violence among youth and young adults, and there's a 2021 year-end incident report from the King County Prosecutor's Office. The statistics are clear that immigrant and refugee communities are disproportionately likely to be impacted by gun violence, which is enough. Everyone deserves to feel safe. I don't care where you live in this city, everyone deserves to feel safe. So when tragedies like this occurred for Brother Mohammed Khadijeh and others, we have to do our job. And so I want to thank again Director Mohammed for, I'm very, quite candid, I'm very proud of her leadership, not only as elected leader, as a department head, just as an example of what can be done when people are supported and given their opportunity to show their brilliance. And so let me stop there, and we will have Q&A after we sign it. I do want to give her introduction the respect that it deserves. Hamdi Mohammed is a civil servant with more than a decade of experience serving immigrant and refugee communities. You'll hear from her next. Hamdi most recently served as the policy advisor to King County, where she managed initiatives directing funds and investments in small businesses, community organizations, and COVID-19 responses. Before working for the King County, she served as the Deputy District Director for U.S. Congressman Pramila Jayapal, and Hamdi has also worked for CARE International and the Refugee Women Alliance REWA in her roles dedicated to fighting poverty and empowering immigrants. She has a bachelor's degree in law, societies, and justice, and a master's degree in policy studies, both from the University of Washington. She has also earned a global business certificate from Harvard Business School in 2021. She won a historic race, becoming the first Black woman elected to the Port of Seattle Commission and the first Somali woman elected in the office in Washington State. I present to you Hamdi Mohammed.
Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Well, that was an amazing bio that the mayor shared. I wasn't expecting that. I am honored to be here in front of all of you as the director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. Our office focuses on improving the lives of our immigrant and refugee communities across the city of Seattle through programs, policies, and citywide practices. In this room today, there are many community leaders, organizations, and also there's a lot of moms who are here who are still coping with the loss of a loved one. I want to acknowledge you. I want to hold space for you. I want you to know that I see you. I would like to thank Mayor Bruce Harold for his leadership to make this issue a priority, for the city to come together to ensure that we are providing culturally responsive services and information for our immigrant and refugee communities. We're providing services that are culturally responsive, linguistically responsive when it comes to violent deaths, unexpected deaths, sudden deaths. Mayor Harold recognizes the urgency of this issue. We're reminded of the urgency of this issue every single day, whether that's on a national level, whether that's locally across this region. We are reminded of that. Our office regularly meets with our immigrant and refugee communities and family members. For instance, my team hosted a community listening session at the High Point Community Center on October 21st with our community members, our immigrant community members, and the attendees were predominantly Black immigrants who shared their experience with gun violence and dealing with unexpected deaths. Community members took turns relaying what their concerns were and what sort of actions they wanted to see from the city of Seattle. What we heard was they wanted strengthened coordination around responses to gun violence and unexpected deaths. They wanted us to increase community engagement, that we partner with them, that we look to them as the experts in the community. They asked for supportive services to help them navigate our government agencies. There is an abundant amount of resources out there. For immigrant and refugee communities, the challenge often is, where do you access that resources? How do you coordinate that? Where do you find resources that speak to your needs in a timely manner? When someone dies, especially for folks who are Muslim, the burial process has to happen within 24 hours. If you don't have that information in advance, quite frankly, you're not going to access those resources. And that was elevated to us. It was elevated to us through rideshare drivers who shared their own experience. To Mohammed Sheikh Hassan, who was in the room and shared his work that he's done for decades around this issue, supporting our immigrant and refugee communities around burial services. We also heard about the painful experience of coping with grief. During the listening session, I shared my first time experiencing the loss of a loved one to gun violence. I was 16 years old. It was a friend of mine in high school. And then I experienced it again in 2019 when I lost my cousin. I still feel that pain. It was painful. It was tragic. And I know a lot of the mothers in this room, what they're feeling. Those feelings that are so hard to describe when you experience violence, when you experience losing a loved one. It's not a new feeling to many of us in this room as immigrants and refugees. Some of us come from war-torn countries, come to the United States looking for safety and security. And when you experience a loss like that here at home, your new home, it is a painful, tough situation to navigate. So I understand and share those pains with you all. But Mayor Hare often says, we got to put our words into action. And I remember when the rideshare driver, Muhammad, passed away, it was the opening of the West Seattle Bridge, and Mayor Harrell was there and I was there, and he said to me, I want to do something. I want us to take action. I want us to respond to the needs of the community. I know the pain, and that's why I love working with him, because he is action-oriented. And this executive order puts us on a path to ensure that family members can receive the coordinated response that they've been asking of us, and the information they need to deal with the grief. And so for some people in this room, it might not feel like a big thing to see this executive order in writing, but it is huge for so many of us in this room today. The Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs is planning to utilize the Immigrant Safety and Access Network program that we are launching in the coming week to ensure that we are partnering with our community organizations, that we coordinate with ethnic media to make sure that these supportive services are in language and that you all can have an understanding around the abundance of services that are available at the city and at the county and the state. We want to make that as accessible as possible. Harold's executive leadership team, we've worked hard and have been following up on this order and making sure that we take this action today. And I also just want to thank all of the community members in this room. It's because of you all that we do this work. It's an honor and a privilege to serve you all. And we look forward to putting the words in this executive order into action.
Before I introduce our next speaker, will be Jennifer Cruz. I just want to do a logistical change for a minute. If you've come here to join us, can we move down a little bit? If they've come here to support their community, our community, and our city, I want them to be able to come in. We started at 10 o'clock, by the way. It's to pay for private lawyers, indigent clients as a criminal defense attorney. And I know from her background and reputation, she leads with restorative justice. She leads with trying to understand the stories behind crimes, so she also realizes laws have to be enforced. That's that balance that we have to have in our judicial system, and she's a prime example of where I personally think the judicial system must go. I present to you Jennifer Cruz.
Thank you so much, and good morning. I just wanted to keep my remarks very brief. As Mayor had said, I am Jennifer Cruz, and I am the program director of the Filipino community of Seattle. The Filipino community of Seattle has been around for 87 years. Over the last 20 years, we have become more of a social service agency where we do help not only Filipinos, however, we help everyone and anyone in our community. And one of the great things about our community is we are always growing and expanding, and we are very, very excited to hear about this order that is in place today, because we think that it will help to move forward and really help our community, and not just our community, but King County as a whole, people of color, immigrants and refugees. One of the things that we do at the Filipino Community Center is we are the main place where people go when they first come here, when they first hear about a community and they are Filipino and they are immigrants. They say, where do I go? They come to the Filipino Community Center and we try to provide them resources and services, and if we're not able to do that, we will find the resources and services. And so I think that that's such an important piece of it, is that we have that information and that access. We have been working with the Seattle Police Department, and one of the things that I personally have been doing is working with the Before the Badge program. And this is such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, and I hope that we continue more programs of dialogue like this, where we are working with individuals who are becoming police officers and talking with them about what our culture is like, what our community is like, what our needs are, and what we perceive the police to be doing or not doing, and trying to break down barriers and make communication better between what we want police officers to do to serve us, as well as police officers understanding what we as immigrants, refugees, and people of color need from our community. We have a number of crimes that have been unsolved, a number of murders of Filipino Americans that we don't want to go cold. As one of the things that we are doing as a Filipino community is we do have an advisory board that works with the Seattle Police Department, and it was one of the first advisory boards that was put in place. But still, we do need more to really keep up to date. And
Thank you very much, Jennifer. She also wanted me to say to any of you that if you have any traffic tickets you want to take care of. Dr. Yahya Sufi, to many circles, needs no introduction. He's the executive director of the Muslim American Youth Foundation. He was born in Somalia and relocated to Seattle due to the civil war in Somalia. He served as the imam in Houston, Texas for approximately 2 years and returned to Seattle to address the needs of youth in his community. And currently he is the resident scholar in West Seattle of Masjid Tawhid, if I'm saying it correctly. He's also the president of the Washington Dukesi Association, WDA, an umbrella of a nonprofit organization of, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing things correctly. I did practice, but I was practicing with someone who might not know how to say it. Nonprofit organization for Quranic Madrasa, and the executive director and founder of the Muslim American Youth Foundation, MAYF, which is a nonprofit organization geared to create accessible refugee services to address the use of Muslim youth residing in Greater Seattle and beyond. So I present to you Dr. Sufi.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. I'm very excited to be in this room this morning. Very diverse. I would reflect in the city of Seattle. And this is what made America great. Having everyone around us, having different cultures, different languages, having different faith and beliefs. So I'm very excited to be here this morning. And the most important thing from this gathering today is that all of us are concerned, and all of us gathered here to give support to one another. As an imam, I am not only representing the Muslim American Youth Foundation, but I'm here on behalf of my Somali community, my Ethiopian community, my East African community, my African community, the Muslim community around the world. So I want you to understand that I am not here to represent only me as I speak. As an immigrant, to come to America costed me so much. And I never thought today I would be here speaking to you. I've lived through a difficult life in Somalia when the civil war broke out, making to different countries, spending years and years and months in refugee camps where there was no food and no water. Think about this. Those of us that make to these States, we're looking for the American dream. Yet, so many of us have lost their loved ones in America that they seek to find a better life. What's more difficult than losing life is to live with the agony and the pain that comes on. On the top of that, imagine if you are not able to find accessibility to bury your own child. This is how difficult it is to me as an imam of my community when we lose someone in our community, because we lose so many young people in our community. The first thing that goes around is, how can we get this and make it smooth? Imagine, what makes this executive order amazing is that it shows the sense of equity and inclusion. So people have different languages, have different faiths, have different way of life, yet this law will allow everyone to have accessibility to those resources that's out there for our community. Our community has been in front lines helping families that are dealing with increasing, easing the process of those of us that are going through pain. As an imam, I call calls from all community members. When we lose one person, regardless of the race or the language, from our Muslim community, it comes back to the imams. So as an imam, the first thing that we question is, how is the process? Where can we start? How can we end this? How can we ease the pain that this family is going through? And I believe having access to the resources and having an ability to find a way to share the pain and the gain with this family is our priority. Thank you so much, Mayor Bruce, and thank you to you.
Okay, we're going to sign the executive order, then we'll be around for some questions and answers. So let's do that. Let's have the...
Why don't we have everyone join in the back?
Everyone join in the back. Not everyone, by the way. Those that are supposed to. All right.
Community members, yes.
I got 4 or 5.
Just give you one who you like.
My eyes are literally closed. There you go.
I'll take one.
I don't know who grabbed it.
All right, we're going to do it.
Do one photo looking over here.
All right. Thank you. We'll take some questions, and I'll go to the podium so I can amplify. Thank you very much, community.
For your leadership also. My name is Ahmed Mumin. I'm the Executive Director of the Seattle Rideshare Drivers Association. And thank you for acknowledging and understanding the pain that the rideshare drivers are going through. Up until today, the person who killed Mohammed Kadir has not been brought to justice. We are asking the Chief of Police, the Mayor, what is being done, and can you please brief us? Thank you very much.
So for those that didn't hear the question, thank you for the question from one of the leaders. I never say the leader because there are many leaders in your organization about the current status of the investigation of the murder of Mohammed Kadir. And Chief, would you like to say a few words in that respect?
We've actually been working on putting out photos of the vehicle that is associated with the person that killed your friend and for somebody family. And so that is one of the struggles that we have. It's a very pixelated photo, but we are also have video as well that hasn't been a good quality of photo, but we're on our video. But we're also trying to make sure that we're getting every level of witnesses that are in the community as well, that were there that night to try and be able to capture it. The vehicle is actually very distinct. I believe it's, if I remember correctly, a charcoal like Prius type of vehicle. And so those are the things that we at least have. It's just getting to a vehicle plate and getting to some identifiers of that. And so right now we have not made an arrest, but we're hoping that people will come forward on information that they might have on this case.
So in your shoes, I'd be angry as well. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna have you address it. I wanna hear from this fine young man, but then I'm gonna see if the press has any questions on this. Go ahead.
Yes.
So I'm calling you young, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Let her go, let her go.
From there, I really appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Cesar Garcia with Lake City Collective, and I live in your community. I'm speaking on our experience with what happened in Ingraham High School, just recently. We're trying to navigate the system, the support system, with the Latino families from kids who witnessed directly this tragedy. So what we experienced is that some of the resources that were available for them in Spanish were available all the other way across town. We are in North Seattle, and some of the referrals were to go to CMAR in South Park. I mean, North Seattle to South Park is very far. A lot of these kids who witnessed this, they didn't want to get service right away. They wanted to take their time. A couple of them, they didn't come out of the room for days. The cultural understanding that we need to have, but also how different ages, grief or actually.
Yeah,